Scarlett Blade. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Silent Night, Memoirs of a Royal Guard, Chapter 26. Silent Night? Princess Luna called from her gaming table. I was still using her secretary's desk during the day. I like being closer to her and able to keep an eye on my squad in action. Plus, I flat out don't like spending time alone. I set down my pencil and came over. Yes, princess? The princess was levitating a tiny paintbrush and a model pony. It was one of many figures she was painting for a new war game. Does this look like thou? She asked, floating the figure close enough for me to see. Never let any pony tell you that Princess Luna isn't artistic. The tiny figure looked exactly like me, down to the silver eyes and blue wingtips. She had captured me perfectly. Every detail was right. My coat and main colors, the dark armor, and even the cutie mark. I admired Mini Silent Night and then said, if you did any better, I might question which of us two was the real one, princess. Happily, she clopped her hooves together and levitated Mini-Me down to dry. Huzzah! She cheered. I nodded and started to head back to my work. Silent Night, she called again. I turned back to her. Yes, princess. Can we speak a few moments, thou and I? She asked. Of course, princess. I replied and looked over to where Solar Flare stood. Give us the room, Solar Flare. Take position right beyond the door. Solar Flare nodded and went outside, leaving the two of us alone. Princess Luna walked over to the sitting area and I followed. We settled on two pillows, then she reached over and took my helmet off. My brow went up. How did she know about the helmets? How art thou doing, Silent Night? She asked softly. I smiled at her. I'm doing well, princess. I'm finally adjusting to being sergeant. My sister is moving to Canterlot, and I have good friends to look after me. She nodded gently, touching her hoof to my heart. How is this? It made me a little uncomfortable. I hadn't really discussed my feelings with any pony but Winterspear. Well, that and my blabbering confession to Princess Celestia. I swallowed and noticed Princess Luna was waiting. I was sad. Now I'm angry, princess, a lot of the time. I keep it bottled up, but it spills out sometimes. In little bursts, mostly as frustrate. No, Lieutenant, I admitted, looking down. Why art thou angry? She asked. Is it the pain of love lost? I shook my head. I meant, no, princess. I've mostly gotten over that. I guess it was puppy love. I had never been in a relationship before, and it was silly to assume ours would be like some fairy tale. Winterspear says that real love isn't like that. With a sigh, I admitted honestly, we didn't work great as a couple. We had different goals, but now I'm angry because she left. She just up and left me and you and Crystal and Runic, every pony. She was supposed to be my best friend. It isn't fair for her to just take that away from me. I said louder than I meant to and stomped my forehoof. Sorry, I hurriedly added, feeling foolish. And thou doesn't think she is thy friend any more? Princess Luna asked rather pointedly. It gave me a pause and forced me to consider the thought. With a shrug, I said, she doesn't write, she doesn't visit. Her injury and personal leave time have almost run out. I don't know what's going on. I sighed and ran my hoof along the edge of my pillow. I want my friend back. I never had a friend before her. Princess Luna smiled at me and softly patted me on the hoof with her own. That is something I understand all too well. I have faith then, Silent Night. If thou can forgive her, maybe that is all it will take to bring her back. To be honest, I've found myself missing her as well. If thou needs to talk, I hope that thou can consider us friends. Iridescence may have towed the line a little closer, but I am confident that thou can find a balance. She picked up my helmet and set it back on my head. I smiled at her and nodded. No, I'm sorry that doesn't work for me, Lieutenant Hayes said. Sir? I asked curiously. He shook his head. You leave your leave request. I have some important Canterlot social functions to attend, and I can't miss them to do your job for you. That was that, then. Walk away, went through my mind. My mouth, however, said, "I'm sorry, sir, that is not a regulation answer. You can deny leave for a security-related reason. That is within your rights. Denying leave because you have some place you'd rather be is against the regs. They're very clear on that." Lieutenant Hayes snorted and said, "Allow me to rephrase, then. It is also within my right to assign less than desirable duties to any pony under my command. If I wish my functions due to some pony insisting that they have leave, I'll know where to assign those duties. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, sir," I said, and then pushed the leave form over to him again. "Just sign here and here, sir. I look forward to receiving my new duties when I get back." The lieutenant lifted a hoof as the paper came close. The look in his eyes seemed to suggest he was considering taking a swing at me. That would be a mistake on his part. A painful mistake. He looked in my eyes and seemed to come to the same conclusion. Sending his hoof back on the paper, he picked up a pencil and signed it. "Thank you, sir," I said. "Dismissed," he replied. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Winterspear asked me. "Without question," I replied, and she nodded. Winterspear hugged me and said, "Okay, well, go tell her then." I didn't need any more motivation than that. It was time to put things off my chest and have life get back to the way it was before, if possible. I tugged my small satchel tight against my armor and leapt into the air when I got outside the barracks. Turning to the east, I set course for Manhattan. I spread my wings wide and started to push the limit. Before I had pulled some very important paperwork, Iridescence's leave forms. She was running out of time and no transfer request had come in. Technically, I was her sergeant. Her name was on my roster and I was going to hold her accountable. That was my job, even if I had used personal leave to make the trip. The address on the file was listed as outside of Manhattan City proper. I was flying into countryside blind, but I had confidence that I'd be able to sort it out. In the worst case, I'd stop into a local mail depot and have them show me how to get there. Mail ponies always helped out the Royal Guards. Our organizations were like sisters. My flight was largely uneventful. I spent the whole trip keeping calm, cool, and collected. Letting feelings creep into what I had to do wouldn't work. This was business. I just had to keep it that way. When I arrived outside Manhattan, I realized finding the address would be easy. There were only a few dwellings out this far, and all of them sat on huge tracts of land. I spotted the right place and came to a perfect professional landing in case anyone was looking out the window. Iridescence's house, if you could call it that, was massive. It was the second biggest home I had ever seen next to the palace in Canterlot. The manor was crafted out of pure white stone and glass. I guess that explained all the bits she had. I approached the large, heavy wooden double doors and knocked. It wasn't long before an older stallion answered. He was dressed in a tuxedo coat with long tails. "Good afternoon. How may I help you?" "Sergeant Knight, Princess Luna's house guard. I'm here to speak with Iridescence. Is she here?" "Miss Iridescence is indeed. May I inquire about the business you have with her?" he replied. From my satchel I produced the leave papers. "Official business. Her leave is almost over, and she is expected to report back for duty. But we haven't had a word from her, and I'm here to ensure she is not planning on going AWOL." "AWOL?" the pony asked. "Away without leave. It is a crime," I said plainly. The pony lifted his nose a bit. "Do come in. Welcome to Eminence Manor, Sergeant." I did so after carefully wiping my hoof guards off. There was no reason to be a bad guest. The butler led me through the foyer and into a large sitting room just off of it. "Miss Iridescence, a royal guard is calling for you," he announced. To be perfectly honest, I had not prepared for this. Iridescence was sitting on a fancy pillow, and she wasn't alone. The room contained 3 other unicorn mares that were clearly her sisters. The first had a coat spun of gold and a shimmering silver mane that seemed to radiate light. She looked older than the others, but was, without a doubt, what you'd call a classic beauty. The second was closer in age to Iridescence. Her coat was more pearl-colored with a mane that was streaked with fiery orange, bright green, and pale blue. The final was more of a filly than a mare. She was light green in color and had a simple, verdant mane. Iridescence rose suddenly, the shock of seeing me clear on the face. The first mare looked over and asked, "Iridescence, you know this pony?" She nodded blankly. "This is Sergeant Silent Knight. He is my superior in the Royal Guard." The second mare waved a hoof. "Oh, is that what this is about?" The third said, "He looks angry." I shook my head and said, "Not angry, miss. We look like this to discourage ponies from mischief." Iridescence shifted and said, "Sergeant, allow me to introduce my sisters." Motioning to the golden mare, she said, "Luminescence." She went on to the second, Opalescence. Finally the last, and Dot. "My pleasure, ladies," I said, and added a light bow. "Why are you here, Sergeant?" Iridescence asked nervously. I still had the papers out. I walked over and set them down in front of her before backing off. "Your leave is almost up. You're expected to be back on duty, and I wanted to make sure one of my unit members wasn't thinking about shirking their duties." Luminescence looked over at me. "Is that what all this is about?" she asked with a huff. "Do you always hound ponies like this? She can't be bothered with that." I didn't move. "I'm sorry, ma'am." She made a commitment and signed a contract. If she isn't bothered with that, she can be imprisoned. All the mares other than Iridescence laughed. Opalescence waved a hoof at me. "You are just too much. Our father is the biggest real estate investor in Manhattan. If you think your little contract will stand up to his lawyers, you're silly." She looked over at Iridescence. "He sounds like that pony you were telling us about. That one you left. What was his name?" "Silent Night," Iridescence and I said at the same time. "Oh, the jilted lover?" Luminescence asked, suddenly very interested. "Scandalous," Opalescence added. "A stallion?" Dot asked curiously. Opalescence rose from her pillow. "You're just here because you're angry. The lawyers will love that. Why don't you run along? Iridescence is staying here." I ignored her and looked at Iridescence. "You know this isn't personal. Why didn't you ever put in your transfer paperwork?" Iridescence's ears fell as she replied, "I didn't want to think about it. Now I'm thinking about it, just asking for a special discharge. My father can make that happen." I snorted. "I see. So you're going to quit. Come back all of this and act like these ponies? Maybe I shouldn't have come then. I'm not sure I'd want to work with a pony like that. That isn't the Iridescence I knew." Luminescence harumphed and said, "How rude." Opalescence walked in a circle around me. "Oh, aren't you feisty? It is cute that you think she would want to get back with you." Dot nodded. "Yeah, we have cookies here." I'm not going to lie, I thought Dot was adorable trying to act like her older siblings. I didn't let it show, though. Iridescence just sat there while the other three berated me with various insults about my stallionhood and my station in life. I barely heard them. I just stared at her. She wouldn't look at me. Finally, I stomped a hoof. It was loud and echoed through the expansive manor. The mares gasped and drew back. "Enough," I said with all the authority of a Royal Guard sergeant. I approached Iridescence. I ducked my head and forced her to look into my eyes. "You made a promise. Are you the kind of pony that breaks a promise? If you are, just let me know. I'll even make certain you get that discharge." I stood up and took a few steps back. Iridescence rose gracefully and lifted her head in defiance. "Iridescence, surely you're not listening to this brute," Luminescence explained. "You may like to hide behind Daddy, but I don't. I did make a promise, and I've had my time off. It is time to go back to work," Iridescence said, filling me with pride. Dot hurried over to hug her. "But I'll miss you." "Don't worry, I'll come home a little more often." Iridescence said, looping a hoof around her sister. You're making a mistake, Opalescence sighed. No, the mistake was running away. Royal Guards don't do that, do they, Sergeant? Iridescence asked me. Never. I'll see you back in Canterlot, I said, bowing slightly before turning to leave. Iridescence took a step forward and said, Sergeant, if it is all the same to you, meet me at the train station. I'll need you to bring me back up to speed on what I missed, if that isn't an inconvenience. Train station it is, I said flatly, walking out of the room and leaving the manor. Why would any pony need a house so large? I thought. I can't believe you came for me, Iridescence said, looking out the window of the train car. Why? I asked curiously. We must have seemed like an odd pair to the others in the train. A royal guard in Princess Luna's colors and a high society Manhattan unicorn. We were getting some looks, but I didn't care. I just kept looking at my friend across the row. She shrugged. After what you did, who would blame you for hating me? Her voice turned into a mockery of herself. Oh, thanks for saving my life, by the way. We're breaking up and I'm leaving. See ya. It was painful to hear. Water under the bridge, I said flatly. Iridescence blinked and looked at me. And it is that easy? You're over it? Just like that? I shook my head. No, it wasn't easy. It was actually awful, but thanks, Celestia, I had friends to help me. My heart was broken, I was sad and mopey, then I was angry. Iridescence shifted uncomfortably. So now what? We get back to work, I said. No, what does that even mean? You didn't just come get me so I could work. There is more to it than that. I got up and moved to her side of the car, plopping down beside her. I said, You promised me you'd always be my friend. You're supposed to be my best friend, Iridescence. My first friend. Maybe we thought that also meant we had to be special some ponies, and I guess we were wrong. I don't know, and I honestly don't want to think about it for now. I can't. I can deal without a sun pony. I need my best friend, though. We go back to work and we start to try to be friends again. Shifting, I added, and not to add any guilt, but the others miss you as well. Did you really want to be like your sisters? Other than Dot, I mean. She was adorable. Iridescence wiped a hoof across her eyes as tears welled in the corners. Of course not. They're awful mean and entitled, but I felt like I had burned the bridge. Friendship is stronger than that, I replied. I guess it is, she said, levitating a handkerchief to dab her eyes. So what is going to be different? I thought that over and said, You'll be reporting to Sergeant Orchid, and you'll need to find a new dorm room. Sergeants don't share rooms with subordinates, and I sort of gave your bed to my sister. When we're off duty, we can be friends just like before. Plus all the others will be waiting for you when you arrive. Iridescence frowned. What do you mean? How could you have known when I came back? You're my friend, and I'm a good judge of character. I had faith, I said plainly. We chatted the rest of the way back. It was awkward, but it was a start. I told her everything that had happened, and she shared what was going on with her. It was like old times, and it felt good. The hours flew by, and the train was pulling into Canterlot Station before I knew it. Trust my word, every pony was on the platform waiting. Crystal Wishes, Runic File, Winterspear, and even Princess Luna with Miley Hooves and Harvest Moon. When Iridescence stepped out of the car, there was a cheer before she was mobbed. Princess Luna looked past the group of ponies at me and nodded. I nodded back and joined the happy reunion. Well then, I hope you guys have had a wunderbar day.